So I started as a newspaper reporter. I transitioned into a newspaper editor where I was supervising the staff, reporters, photographers, page designers. I also did a lot of page designing layout myself. And then I helped create at my hometown newspaper the first website for the newspaper, and that was back in 1995. So I worked on that on and off until unfortunately I was laid off from the newspaper in 2012. But I had basically done almost every job in the newsroom that you can think of. While I was working at that newspaper, one of my colleagues, Sue Freeman, said, "You should come with me to this group that I'm in. We have a meeting in Des Moines and you can learn all about the National Federation of Press Women and Iowa Press Women." So I went with her, had a really good time. There were speakers, award ceremonies, at lunch for the high school students who had entered the contest. And then they had an evening awards banquet for their communications contest. And I really enjoyed it, but I didn't end up joining right away. She invited me to go the next year, and I didn't join until the following year. So by that time I had entered the contest, was an award winner, and so had my first introduction to NFPW at the 1995 conference in Charlotte, so I could accept my award. At that Charlotte conference, I had such a fantastic time. I was just so impressed with the speakers. Gwen White was one of the conference directors, and I was telling her this yesterday. I said, Gwen just had it all together. She was the consummate professional, introducing the speakers, making sure we were having a good time. And then Jean Borman, an Iowa member, introduced me to Meg Hunt, who is from South Carolina and is now an NFPW past president. And I had known Meg for 5 minutes, and she found out that I'm a huge auto racing fan, a big NASCAR fan. And as it turned out, Meg needed to run to another part of Charlotte where her sister lives, which wasn't too far from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So I said, "Oh, I'd love to swing by the Speedway." And Meg kind of did the math and said, "Well, we should have time to do that." So I went with Meg and Rebecca West, and we stopped by. I got to meet Meg's nephew, Jacob, who was at the time this little tiny baby, and now he's a college student. So after that, we went over to the Speedway. They actually were open. They had their gift shop open. They had some Legends racing going on. So it was free to get in. And Meg and Becca are not racing fans, but they, still took me, we spent a little bit of time watching the racing, and then we headed back to the hotel. And needless to say, they're lifelong friends. When I went to a NASCAR race back in Charlotte last year, they drove up from South Carolina and had lunch with my sister and I. I absolutely had a number of goals laid out, and we didn't quite achieve all of them, and I think that's probably true of any presidency. Your sight's pretty high, and you over time realize, well, this maybe we can't achieve this, so let's concentrate on the things we can achieve. And I can absolutely say what I am probably most proud of is the introduction of Admin Concepts as our NFPW management team. They had big shoes to fill because American Press Works had been our outstanding management team for 17 years. They were family, and as it turned out, American Press Works, handed as much information over to Admin Concepts as they could, were available to answer questions, as things came up. They still answer the occasional question, as something over time, needs to be answered. And then Jordan Hendler and her team came in, and they were sponges. They wanted to know anything and everything about NFPW. How can we maybe take a program or project that had been done a certain way for years, and how could they maybe improve it or use technology to do it more quickly? So is there a way we can improve the renewal process? Is there a way we can do something different at conference? So, they came in full of energy, and it was actually in the renewal time of year. So, there was no a little bit of a lull before we have to really dive into something. They just, took it all head on, and, we worked through. Of course, there were bugaboos, there always are in these transitions. But, overall, I think that that those first few months went really smoothly. And then, of course, they had their first conference to conduct or work with us on in Wichita last September. And again, they had a few little nuances that they brought to us and said, hey, can we do this? Oh, absolutely. We just never thought of that before. And then we were sharing our traditions with them. This is one of the things we do every year. It may seem a little weird or a little crazy, but that's our tradition. So that to me has been probably the thing I was most uncertain about was how is this all going to play out? And now looking back, I don't know how it could have gone better. Well, and on one hand, it's like, a big relief. But on the other hand, it's still a big job to be the immediate past president because you are becoming the leader of the Education Fund. And for those who may not be aware, the Education Fund is a separate from NFPW. We have that little bit of connection, but really it's a separate entity. And we do so many wonderful things with the Education Fund. The first-timer grants for those attending a conference for the first time. We also offer grants for a member who would like to attend a workshop or conference and just maybe doesn't have the means to do that, and we can help support that education and ongoing training. We also have the high school communications contest, which for years was the only two-level contest that we were aware of in the country where a student could enter at an affiliate level, and that first place award from the affiliate would go on to a national competition. And then that's even been enhanced another step. The last several years we've had a best of the best competition on top of that for the first place national winners. So it's really become a three-level contest, and that's so exciting to see the student entries, and that as much as student journalism is struggling in our schools and the support isn't there, the funding isn't there, that there are still advisors and parents and students who are making groundbreaking works and publishing them and sharing them, and it's exciting for us to hear about them.